So I'll take a motion to approve the minutes.
Whitman moves on.
Foley second.
All right, a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the minutes? All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Carried. All right, we'll start right off with the next agenda item, which is Mrs. Anderson, real property.
Get in it? You don't necessarily need to. Can I? Well, they might ask me.
Well, you could, but we can probably see you right through. From the, yep, and it will turn it. I'll write to you.
Oh, I see.
Guys, she's on with us, right? Anyone?
Who are you looking for?
Anderson, real property. She on?
I don't know.
I don't see her on the right-hand side here. If not, we're going to have to skip ahead on the agenda. I think Mr. Orman is on. I think I saw him. No? All right. We'll keep going.
Chris?
Yes.
Jim Orman is muted.
Oh. Jim Orman's.
Oh, Orman's on. He's just muted. Mr. Palermo. Elaine, can you hear me? Yes? All right. So did you hear someone say that Orman's on? He's just muted?
Yes.
All right. Is there any way we can get in touch with him? Is anyone corresponding with him right now? You guys are killing me.
Can you hear me?
Yes, who's this?
I am.
Jim, take your mic off of mute.
I texted him.
Okay, thank you. All right,
He's
we can
frozen.
keep trying. So,
He doesn't get the internet way down there on the water, probably.
all right. This is going fantastic. So Kelly Anderson's not available. Jim Orman is
Frozen.
We're having trouble with that. How about third time's a charm? Lisa with Human Resources, is she on?
Yes, I am. I'm the LL.
Chris?
Outstanding. Would you like to proceed, ma'am?
Sure. So we're still getting applications coming in for towns and villages. We had 20 for the towns and villages, 65% are female, 35% male. Applications for the month are 97 with 20% female, 79% male, 89% white, 5% are minority, and there was a 5% that did not answer the race question. Of the hires that we did in the first week of March prior to the shutdown and working remotely, we had 5 individuals that were hired in the first week of March. 60% of them female, 40% male, and 100% white at this point in time. Some of those were civil service exam individuals, just as a sidebar on that. We are all currently working remotely with a rotating schedule into the office. And much of our time so far has been spent with people asking a lot of questions about the changes that have taken place in new legislation, executive orders as a result of the pandemic. We've been assessing employees' requests for the Family First Paid Leave and emergency FMLA to determine who's eligible, tracking the listings, as well as evaluating the corresponding documentation necessary to qualify the individual and for the tax credits we might be eligible for as a result. We've been sending out a lot of email links regarding telemedicine, employee assistance programs, mental health, fitness, and education programs to help with dealing with children being homeschooled, employees while teleworking to all staff over this past month. Working on several projects, including updating areas in the system, including the new hire orientation, being able to do that both electronically, remotely, as well as in person once we get back to the new normal. Trying to create electronic records for all employee rosters for faster information. Making sure that the job descriptions are more uniform moving forward and cleaning up that. And we've been doing a lot of HR metrics reports that have been requested by several different entities during the COVID pandemic. We're still processing applications, eligible lists, MSP requests, payroll certifications and leaves, as well as New York State Civil Service requests and questions, sending out exam notices and answering all other HR and civil service related questions that people have had a litany of over the past month with all these changes that have taken place. Any questions?
Very good, thank you. Any questions for Lisa? Okay, hearing none. Thank you, Lisa, for pinch hitting. We'll go back to the start.
No problem.
I can see that Kelly and Jim are both online, so we'll try Kelly again. Kelly Anderson, Real Property.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. I wasn't muted before, but for some reason the audio wasn't working. So,
Okay.
and then I was disconnected. Anyway, so everybody should have my report. I didn't really have anything to add to it. I think the most important thing that the treasurer and I are dealing with right now is the fact that the budget item was included to take the star exemption away from anybody who is behind on their taxes. So we've had a few conference calls with Albany, and there's another one tomorrow. And then we're going to meet internally and sort out how to implement that in time for this year's school tax cycle. So the other big change that happened is the state issued some directives about this year's assessment calendar, and they're allowing local governments to push it out 30 days, but by local option only, meaning the calendar stays as it is unless a specific town chooses to move it out 30 days. But I don't think that would be helpful to anyone in our county. So nothing else to report.
Very good. Thank you. Any further questions for Kelly?
Question, Mr. Chairman. Tim Lattimore.
Yes, sir. Proceed.
Kelly, in your report, you say gas well production values, special franchise values. Can you expand a little bit on that?
Those are the values we enter every year that we get from the state, and we put them on our file. Nothing unusual about that.
Like we just lowered the property value at the glass plant, but they have a series of wells. Are the wells assessed?
Yes, they file production reports with our office, and then we key those values into the database. So it's an annual process.
Thank you.
Okay, any further questions? Thank you very much, Kelly.
Sure.
All right, we're go circle back to the treasurer, Mr. Orman. I don't think he's hearing me.
No, still frozen.
Mary Beth, can you hear me?
Oh, she's muted.
You're still on mute.
I can hear you now. Sorry.
Okay, thanks. So it appears Jim is his mic might not be on or something. Is there anything that you wanted to add for the treasurer or anything that you wanted to contribute?
I don't think there's anything. We're really pretty much all working remotely. Everything seems to be going pretty smoothly. So I think we're pretty good.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Mr.
All
Chairman,
right.
Hello, Chris.
Mr. Chairman,
Hold on. I think I might have heard Jim.
Chris?
Jim, is that
Hi,
you?
Chris. Yeah, I'm on the phone. For some reason, it won't unmute. I saw you, which was a pleasure, but
Thank you.
I couldn't get into it.
Okay.
I did a test run earlier, and it worked perfect. So I
Okay.
don't know what's wrong.
All right. Well, I'm glad we got you now.
Yep.
So, is there anything that you would like to add or present to us?
No, I sent the report in. In the interest of time, if there's any comments on it, the AUV is one of the more important things trying to get done under constraints. But I'm confident we'll be very close to the deadline. So,
Okay.
I know Mary Beth is working very closely with a number of people on the financials, which you'll hear more about later. So, yeah. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, sir. Are there any questions for the treasurer?
yes, Mr. Chairman, I asked Jim earlier in the week to get a full assessment from all the different agencies that we have, CCDC and CETA and all the different short-term, long-term CDs that we have. Hopefully we can get a report back as to what our financial position is.
That's what Mary Beth has been working on, and I think you have the reports, and that may be discussed later.
That's an accounting of all different.
It's not all of them because we don't have access to all their records. You mentioned CETA. We don't have access to their records. That would be through the planning committee. We do have the reserve, and then the other ones, the CCDC, we can find out, but they're not in our records per se. So yeah, I mean, we can do a joint effort to find out. That's not a problem. That's in fact we're looking into that. So.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think that it would be of great interest to see exactly how well we've done for the last 10 years since I've been on the board, saving money and working hard. I know that Jim got our bond rating improved. Would be nice to know what our indebtedness is. And I know that water and soil want to put in a new water line. It would be great to know what our bonding rates are and before we go forward with any projects.
Thank you, Mr. Lattimore. Those are all valid questions, and I'm confident that the treasurer and Mary Beth are working diligently. So I look forward to the data that they're going to present to us. Any further questions for the treasurer? All right. So
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. So Ways and Means has resolutions. Ways and Means 1, authorizing additional compensatory time for non-bargaining employees, and Ways and Means 2, adoption of a resolution to extend contract with Heritage Abstract to provide in rem tax foreclosure searches for an additional year. I'll entertain a motion for one or the other or both, whatever the
Mr.
committee.
Chair Foley, I'll move Ways and Means 1 and 2 as a bundle, unless anyone wants it singled out.
Yeah, this is Batman. Separate them. Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second
Separate
on, I'm sorry. Okay,
Separate them.
copy. All right, Mr. Dennison wants to separate them, so we'll take them one at a time. WM1, I'll take a motion.
How did I call?
Foley, I'll move WM1.
Motion by Foley. Is there a second?
Yeah, this is Batman. I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on WM1?
Yeah, I'd just like a little explanation, that's all.
All right. So, Mr. Palermo, would this be your purview, or is the chairman on?
The chairman is on, and I'm here as well. I think either one of us could probably explain it.
Well, I'll defer to the chairman, chairwoman.
Oh, do I need this?
Nope.
Oh, I don't need this. You said I can hear me.
Yep, you have to speak up a little bit.
Hi, I'm just getting used to this new technology here in Chambers. So WM1, let me find it. Actually, here we are. It's allowing comp time to be used for non-bargaining professionals in our county as a result of their hard work over this course of this COVID crisis. So this is a way to compensate them for a lot of these people working, kind of extreme overtime hours. I think every department has been touched by COVID. When you think of the health department or EMO, you can think about how much time that they're devoting, they're working through the weekends and all of this. So I know each department has in some way contributed to this crisis. So this was a way for us to provide for them. And we started talking about this in the very beginning of this crisis. So, here it is now presented to you to talk about or to consider.
Thank you. Mr. Dennison, did you have a question?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with this. I'm just wondering how is it implemented? How does somebody just say, hey, I put in this many hours? How are we tracking this? And does everyone get it, or just put the time?
Mr. Dennison, if I might, Mr. Petrus, is that all right?
Yes, thank you.
So right now, non-bargaining employees basically are allowed to have a bank of up to 35 hours of compensatory time. So theoretically, if an employee works, during 1 week, they work 40 hours, they can take five additional hours and put them aside in a bank and use them for time off later. The banks are limited to a maximum of 35 hours. Once you get to that 35-hour limit, either you'll use your time to lower the amount of comp time you have in your bank, or you lose it if you work any longer. So what this resolution does is it kind of expands the size of the bank for a short period of time, allowing more than 35 hours. So people that are working, a considerable amount beyond their 35-hour week can still bank it, as opposed to them perhaps, using it up now, trying to take time off to use their comp time. Does that make sense?
The expiration.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, I get that. I guess I don't know. I'm just curious how we track it, being that nobody's actually in the building, I guess.
Every employee fills out a spreadsheet basically for our time each pay period, and when we submit it, we also submit the comp time that's either earned or used. And those are all approved by the department heads. So that's essentially where the tracking occurs.
You all set, Andy?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, I think Mr. Whitman had a question or wanted to add something. Tucker?
I'm good. Mr. Palermo answered my question before I
Okay,
asked
very
it.
good. Any further discussion on WM1? Okay, hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, opposed? Carried. Now at this time, I'll entertain a motion for WM2.
Oh, this is Foley. I'll move WM2.
Whitman will move it.
Second, Foley.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion on WM2? Okay, no further discussion on WM2. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, one opposed. Is that Tucker? I think I got it for the record. All right. So,
I'm in favor.
oh, you're in favor, so it's unanimous. Very good. Thank you. All right. Mrs. Daly with Health and Human Services.
I'm sorry, this is Batman. I can't hear. Sorry, is it just me?
No, I can't hear either. Elaine,
Can't. I hear.
Elaine.
Kicked out of the room. She's probably having to reconnect.
Oh, did she? I can still see her. Elaine. Elaine, unmute. There you go.
Okay.
Perfect.
All right. So there's HH1, which is to accept Healthy Neighborhoods grant. Once the state releases the amount of money that they're going to have, this would be the authorization to let the health department accept those funds. And then HH2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 were tabled. Those have to do with changes to employee status or filling a vacancy and retitling a position, and they were tabled until June. And then HH7, which we discussed at HHS, but actually moved on, got permission to move on to Ways and Means, is giving mental health the authorization to fill the third position in the Healing Community Study Grant. And that's the grant that we accepted and working with Columbia to do to deal with our opioid overdose deaths. And I had explained at the committee that basically we have already accepted the $191,000 startup funds, and we have committed to the hiring of these particular positions. And although the grants seem to be sort of on hold in May or in March, the steering committee is reconvened and we are starting the work groups, and the work of that grant will continue. So this would be authorization to fill that third position. And the resolution's clear that when the funding's gone, the position would no longer exist. So I'm asking for consideration to fill that position.
This is Batman. I'll move HH1.
Mr. Batman, did you move HH1?
Yes, I did.
Is there a
Foley, I'll second.
Foley, second. Very good. Motion and a second. Further discussion.
Whitman will second.
I'm sorry. All right. Further discussion on HH1. Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay. Now HH7, I believe, was the next one.
Correct.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion for HH7.
Move it, Andy.
Thank you.
Second, Foley.
Thank you. Motion and a second. Further discussion on HH7. Okay. Mr. Batman, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and I have no issue with this. I'm in favor of it. I want to point out though that if in fact we continue over the next period of time, meaning next year after, not just this year, it's clear, but if the long-term impact of this shutdown and the change in economic conditions is such that we have to be increasingly cautious of expenditure, whenever we get a grant, we need to look at the continuing cost of it. Or for example, in this case, we are putting these people on, they're going to pay 100% from the grant. But when that grant is over, they will go on unemployment unless we can find or someone else can find another position for them. And we are self-funded on unemployment. So the cost all of these things, and we just need in the future to keep that in mind. That's all I want to point out.
Thank you. Mr. Whitman?
I just didn't want Mr. Batman to get all the credit for this idea, so I just wanted to back him up on it. It is something that, he brings up a very good point. It's something we need to consider with these grant funded positions. We don't know what's going to happen. And we just need to be prepared to do without these positions in the near future if necessary. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion on HH7? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Daly.
Mhm.
I believe Mr. Foley is next on the agenda, going from memory.
Yep.
No,
Mr.
Mr.
Chairman,
Bat-
government.
Is that? Yep. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, government operations has 3 resolutions. The first one was to upgrade the fiber, the internet at the county office building. Second and third were from the Board of Elections to accept grant funds. I offer them up as a bundle unless anyone wants one singled out.
Okay, Mr. Foley offers
Whitman will move them.
Second up.
motion and a second. Any further discussion on the bundle? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, carried. Mr. Lattimore, you'd like to speak?
Yes, Mr. Foley, as chairman of government ops, I know that we're looking at some changes in our governmental structure. Establishing a director of building and grounds, establishing the director of public works, and weights and measures. If we had any discussion in government ops on those changes?
What discussion would you want to have? Exactly.
Well, I think our former administrator had a super person down at the highway. We rearranged the whole thing. This new proposal is it like similar to what our former administrator was doing. Anyway,
okay.
I'd like to bring that up in government ops sometime.
Okay. We'll look into it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Foley. All right. So moving along, next, if memory serves me correctly, it's yes. Planning, Mr. Batman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Planning has 2 resolutions. The first is to identify or define the Cayuga County as the lead agency for the secret review that has to be done for the work in the Sterling Nature Center. This is just routine. The second is a resolution to contract with Nick Colas after he retires to complete the GIS mapping for the watershed management, the revitalization plan. This is the 9 elements plan for Owasco Lake, and the both of these are routine, have been planned. And by the way, the planning, planning 2, the Nick Colas stuff is going to be paid with FLOPA funds. So I would move them as a bundle because I don't think there's any controversy here unless something must have separated. I would move the bundle.
I'll make a motion, Haley.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the bundle? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, very good. Thank you, Chairman Batman. All right. Next, Public Works, Chairman Whitman. Did we lose Tucker? No? Tucker. All right, Andy, can you hear me?
Putting sandbags out on the dock.
Andy, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can see Tucker.
Yeah, I know. I can see him too, but I just figured until we get it squared away, we should maybe we can move on to JP.
Yeah, that's fine.
Thanks.
Whitman's back too, so you go ahead and do JP.
All right, we'll circle back to you. Thanks, Tucker. Andy?
All right, JP1, authorizing the chair of the legislature and the sheriff of Cayuga County to enter into an agreement with Global Tellink Corporation for the management, operation, and maintenance of the inmate telephone system at the jail.
I'll move it. Haley?
Okay. Haley moved it. Is there a second?
Whitman will second.
Okay, very good. Motion and a second. Any further discussion on JP1? Okay, hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
All right, JP 2 and 3 are the same ones that were on last week or whatever. A lot of that information has been sent to everyone to read. Some more information was sent again today. It's basically the agreement with Cayuga Counseling for the pretrial stuff and also the alternative sentencing program. So I don't know if maybe you want to bundle them or do them separate.
I'll offer a motion for both of them.
Okay, motion by Whitman. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you. Motion and a second. Okay, so discussion.
Well, it does seem like we have some work to do in terms of, the terms of the agreement and the amount that we were going to fund the contracts for. And I had a suggestion that I don't know whether this will work or it won't, but we have certainly talked about these contracts for some time now. At the time of the budget, we've trying to determine what's the best path to take related to continuing them or making any of the necessary adjustments if there are any to be made. Cayuga Counseling has continued to provide these services without a contract, with no payment at this point, and I certainly believe that has to be dealt with. They're due, the payment for the work they've done. It appears that they bill the county on a quarterly basis based on the total amount of the contract. That's what Mr. Palermo had said at the last meeting. We all received some information that Aileen requested from Jay with some background on the contracts. I did some follow-up questioning with Jay, and I hope I got to everybody and sent you the responses that he had sent me. And, from my point of view, these are all contracts that are part of the Cayuga County's 2019-20 classification alternatives to incarceration plan that's submitted to DCJS. The plan runs from July, he says, of 19 to June 30th of 2020. From the communication I had that we got from Jay, that it is not at all clear who is responsible to monitor these contracts. Perhaps it's the Alternatives to Incarceration Committee that's headed up by our DA. The contracts have been in place since 2008, and from my understanding, would be in need of some type of review. So given that, I was wondering if it would make sense to put these contracts in force, have the period run from January till the end of June, the same time frame as the plan. Just take the dollar amounts, the annual dollar amounts, and cut them in half. And then during that interim, ask this Alternatives to Incarceration Committee that we keep hearing about to actually convene a meeting, review the contracts, and then come back with a recommendation of whether it makes sense to continue these contracts past June 30th. Should they be modified in any way? And I would hope at that point to come up with a recommendation of what department actually oversees and monitors what's happening. So that was my initial recommendation, was to a way to get Cayuga counseling paid and to at least get some attention on these contracts by this Alternative to Incarceration Committee.
Okay. So was that, I'm trying to ascertain what, are you,
An offered amendment?
are you trying to do that as a motion, or
Well,
it just?
if that was, I put that out initially for discussion with the rest of the committee, but if that made sense, then we could fill the information in from January to June 30th with the dollar amount of half of the year contract, and then a whereas that the Alternatives to Incarceration Committee meet and make recommendations for what happens after June 30th.
I'll second that amendment. That makes sense to me. This is Batman.
Okay, so you got a motion and a second, but my question is, I believe for Mr. Palermo, because we did them as a bundle, the two of them.
Yeah. The
Would he
alternative.
have to separate?
Yeah, I mean, the alternative sentencing program, the dollar amount would be $12,072 if we cut the current contract in half, and the pretrial diversion would be $5,500 for that half a year period.
Okay, so again, my question is, can we just make that amendment and then pass them as a bundle?
Mr. Peters, that's fine with me. I can have them prepared for the full legislature meeting next Tuesday, so that way, if anybody's unsure, they'll at least have the chance to read it in writing, and I'll get that done.
Okay, all right. So we're just gonna go ahead and move these as is, or because we have a motion, we got to vote on the amendment, right? So let's do it that way. So the amendment as proposed. Any further discussion on that? All right, hearing none. So on the amendment as proposed, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, hearing none. So now on the bundle as a whole. Further discussion? All right, hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Very good, carried. Oh, Andy, do you have one more maybe? Oh, wait, I would like the record to reflect that I abstained from the Cayuga counseling vote. Thank you.
Yeah, same here.
Thank you. Andy, you got one more, man?
Yeah, I'm waiting for the screen to go back to him.
All right.
All right, JP4, and I know Amy and Lynn are also supposed to be on the line in case anybody questions this. This is authorizing Amy, Director of EMO, to fill a vacant administrative officer position on a temporary basis, because what this amounts to is being able to get the money back for the COVID-19 thing. You can't just say, hey, we got a guy who's doing this. Can you reimburse us? You got to actually have a person in a position to get the reimbursement. So that's what this is for.
Okay. So before we go to discussion, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Whitman,
Daily second.
Whitman will second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Now, discussion. I believe Mr. Whitman wanted to ask a question or add something.
Yeah, my only question about this one was, it says not to exceed 6 months. Is that from the retroactive date or from the date this resolution passes?
Well, it says in it retroactive to March 16th, so that's what I'm going to assume.
6 months from March 16th.
Yes.
Okay, that's all.
All right. Any further discussion on JP4?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I had a question. Ms. Batman.
Yes, sir.
I would suggest that nobody's going to be opposed to this, by the way. We're in a real crisis here. But it would be good. What we usually do with these is we have the parameters. And in this case, I would suggest that we do not to exceed 6 months and $20,000 in reimbursement, excluding mandatory benefits. The $20,000 is part-time, full part-time thing for the 6-month period. And so it provides the parameter that I think we need. If we do go over it, quite frankly, I think we make it clear to Amy that she needs to come back and we need to do whatever needs to be done to support that office.
Not to exceed 20 grand, 6 months.
Keith, I think we lost you.
Okay.
Oh,
Are you?
Yeah, I'm
Are
just
you with us?
suggesting that we put it. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Or no?
Yep.
I'm suggesting we put a dollar amount in, which would be $20,000 plus benefits, in addition to the 6 months.
Okay, and you're making that as a motion?
Yes, please.
All right.
I'd second that.
Whitman will
Okay,
second.
we have a motion and a second. Discussion on the amendment.
I think from a point of clarification that Keith, basically you're saying this puts an initial dollar amount in, and certainly if that was to be exceeded, there would be the ability to come back, but this at least gives us some framework as to what's going to be expended.
Yes. Yeah. And it also monitors if it goes from part-time to full-time, which is a whole separate issue, but yes.
All right. Any further discussion on the amendment? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, carried. Now on the resolution itself. We had a motion in a second, so any further discussion on the motion itself? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
It's like
Opposed?
he's on the max headroom.
Opposed? Hearing none, carried. And I do believe that ends the nightmare. Unless any
We gotta go back to
Public Works, my apologies. Thanks, Tucker.
Oh,
nice try.
Yeah.
All right, Public Works. I have two for this evening. PW2 got tabled. We're going to wait on that one a little bit. Gary is on standby if we have a ton of questions for him, but I don't really foresee that. PW1 was authorizing the replacement of two HVAC units at the 911 equipment room. I believe Gary's wanted to drop that down to one unit. Maybe Mr. Palermo could clarify the exact details, but I believe the numbers were in the ballpark of about 3,000 for the one. He just wanted to go ahead with that for now. If I'm mistaken, somebody correct me.
Tucker, that's right. So this resolution, this is the one that came out of Public Works. And perhaps, Mr. Whitman, you may want to pull it.
Right.
There is a resolution for the special meeting, which immediately follows this meeting, fixing a date and time for a public hearing to accomplish the same thing, except to appropriate the monies from the building repair reserve rather than use the unrestricted fund balance. We talked about this briefly. We weren't sure at the Public Works meeting whether or not there would be a special meeting.
Okay.
So if that's, I guess, acceptable.
I'll go ahead and pull this one then.
Okay. And I do have the numbers, Tucker, for the board, it's $30,924 even. The two vendors are RL Kistler, Upstate Temperature Control. So those are the two vendors, and that's the amount.
Okay. All right, so that brings us to PW3, which is waiving the parking fees for Emerson Park. We discussed this in committee and it passed.
I'll move it.
Okay, motion. Motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion on PW3?
Got one, Chris.
Okay.
We don't. I mean, it's just waiving fees for Emerson Park. There's no start, end date, anything like that. I mean, I'd like to make an amendment to it and put waiving fees for Emerson Park for 60 days. I mean, what are we? I don't know. I mean, how long are we going to do it for? I guess we could always readdress it if a time frame ran out, I suppose.
All right. There's a motion for an amendment by Mr. Dennison.
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Whitman. Discussion on the amendment. 60 days, I do believe that.
Hey, Chris.
Go ahead.
I don't know if it necessarily relates to the amendment, but I just wanted to, I mean, it partially does, but I didn't hear the full dialogue of this at committee. So the funds that are usually collected, I know that when we've talked about this in the past, the funds that are usually collected for the fees are part of like a building fund or a repair fund for facilities at Emerson Park. So was there discussion on how those will be made up? I just wasn't there for the discussion, and I don't know if anyone has that answered.
I think I can speak to that a little bit. I think we're going to have a savings on the employment side, as we're not going to have somebody staffing the booth, and coming in contact with people. That was kind of some of the thought process behind it, is, removing that employee from the exposure and still allowing people to go use the park to get some exercise and fresh air and still be socially distanced. I don't have the exact numbers, the offset of parking versus staffing the booth and whether it's a wash or not, but I can't believe there'd be a huge difference there.
Mr. Vitale, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I thought the resolution basically read that we're doing away with the fees until the legislature takes further action. So I don't really know if the 60 days is necessary. I think once it's over, the legislature has to take the action to reinstate them.
Okay. Any further discussion on the amendment? All right. All in favor of the amendment as proposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Carried. Now on the resolution as amended. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Petrus, it was very difficult for in chambers for the minute takers to who voted in favor of the amendment, who voted against. It was hard to tell.
Okay.
We could have last names.
Sure. So we'll start with, please, let's do opposed. Opposed, state your name. All right, no, none.
Okay.
Very good. All right. Would anybody else? What's that, Mr. Whitman?
That's all for me.
All right, very good. Anything else to come before the committee?
Adjourn.
I don't know about you guys, but I want to get back into business. Motion in a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Hey.
All right. Pleasure doing business with you.
The ledge meeting start next, right next.
We just start right away.
If you want to.
Is it the same stream?
Perfect. Yes.
Yep.
But Chris, we have to get out of this and then go back in?
No?
No?
Full house or what?
Oh, that's for executive session. Okay.
The announcement was that the special legislature meeting would immediately follow Ways and Means. Based on the number of participants, it looks like you've got what you're going to get. Yeah.
Great.
Because Daley, there is an executive session on the agenda. That's where you'll need to move to.
Log out and come back in.
Correct.
Okay. Are we gonna do the roll call?
I would, because I can't tell.
Okay.
Can they hear me from here?
Did you want to come up here?
Are you done?
They should be able to hear you.
Whenever.
They can hear you.
Oh, okay. Tucker Whitman,
Here.
Andy Dennison. Dennison?
Oh, he got up.
Get up.
He's here.
There he is.
Ben Vitale,
Here.
Chris Petras,
Present.
Paul Pinckney,
Here.
Keith Batman, Hans Putcher. I see
Here.
him. He's got his thing up, but I see him. Charlie Ripley, Heidi Nightingale,
Present.
Oh,
They come, Leo.
Tricia Kerr, you're muted, Trish.
I know. Oh, I'm here.
Tim Lattimore,
Here.
Michael Didio,
Here.
Ryan Foley,
Present.
Aileen McNabb Coleman.
Present.
And this is Batman. I'm here.
Okay, thank you, Keith.
Thank
did
you,
you get
everyone.
Yep. Okay.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us tonight. We're having this special ledge meeting to discuss getting a picture of our finances. We need to establish where we are before we can find a path forward. So that is what we're doing tonight. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to forego the formalities tonight. Let's see. Okay, so I sent you all an email and I've asked for some presentations. So I've asked Mary Beth and Lynn Marinelli, our budget director and deputy treasurer, to give us a snapshot of where we are, especially at the end of the first quarter, and so we can begin to discuss what's in front of us. So with that, I think we're going to start with Lynn first, or would you rather start Mary Beth? Okay, is Mary Beth on right now?
I am.
Great. Hi, Mary Beth.
Hello.
If you could tell us where we are at the end of the first quarter and with what you've prepared for us, that would be great.
Okay, great. So I sent a couple emails out today. The first one that I wanted to talk about was the fund balance at 12/31/19. Basically, this kind of shows you we added funds to the fund balance this year. You can see the transfer out of $5 million and we transferred to reserves. We've used a little bit from reserves and what we've added back. So our ending number at 12/31/19, obviously before we've been audited, and I do know there will be some adjustments, pretty minor, but we do have some adjustments left to do. So we would end at 18,128. Below that, you can see the reserves that we have currently in place, and what the balances are at the end of the year. And then below that kind of breaks out the assigned fund balance. There is a reserve for unemployment insurance in the assigned fund balance. And then your encumbrances and budgeted. That kind of gives you an idea of where we are at total. And then I also,
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Mary Beth. You're kind of going in and out in terms of how I.
Okay.
Yeah, if you could somehow, we'll try again and.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Okay.
I can hear.
Okay.
I can hear you.
Good. So basically, we're ending 12/31/19 with 18.1 million in our unappropriated fund balance. You can see the reserves directly below it. Assigned fund balance also includes an unemployment reserve, the encumbrances, and what we budgeted to take out of fund balance in our 2020 budget. So that kind of gives you a quick snapshot. As I mentioned, it's unaudited at this point. I do know that we have a couple of accruals to adjust, but I don't think they'll have a big impact on those numbers. So that kind of gives you a picture of where we end 2019. And then we tried to bring it forward to 3/31. The biggest thing to remember is we've taken about 1.4 million out of the fund balance at the beginning of the year. So those are things that have already come out of the fund balance for 3/31. So just keep that in mind. I will tell you the report I sent you for the first quarter financials as far as revenue and expense, very comparable to last year. We're pretty much on target for exactly what we had before. Any question?
Mary Beth?
Yes.
I was trying to get my hand up, but I'm not going to go up. On the casualty and liability, you've got brackets around the $1,000,004. Does that mean it's
right? That's the
restricted, unrestricted?
So basically, in the first quarter, the legislature voted to take $1.4 million out of the unappropriated fund balance to pay a legal claim. That's what that's for.
Okay. There was nothing in that reserve prior to that action?
We have a casualty and liability reserve in our accounts in our MS fund. However, that fund does not have enough to pay the potential claim, and that's why I believe the resolution went through to take $1.4 million out.
Mary Beth, this is Trish. Can you hear me?
I can.
I was just curious, as a general rule of thumb, how does the fund balance work in terms of how much we try to keep in there? compared to our operating expenses and what's a healthy fund balance, as well as in terms of the restricted funds for reserves. If what flexibility do we have in moving those funds out if needed when we're looking at balancing a budget?
So as far as a healthy fund balance, I mean, the state actually provides zero guidance as far as that goes, but our county policy says 10 to 15% of our operating budget should be in reserves or in unappropriated fund balance. I'm sorry. So that's kind of the guideline that we've gone is 10 to 15%. As far as the reserves, those are legal kind of questions, and Mr. Palermo may have more clarification, but my understanding is that once you've established the purpose, it's virtually impossible to take out unless you're using it for that purpose. Maybe Mr. Palermo has more legal knowledge of that, but that's my understanding.
Hey, Mary Beth.
Yes.
Elaine. As a follow-up to Chris's question, somehow I remember the 13, 19 million is somewhere in that range. Is that somewhat true?
Well, I mean, I think our operating budget is about 140 million. So if we took that, then 10% would be about 14. So that would be your low end.
So I hear what you I didn't hear the whole story you just said.
Basically, 14 million would be the 10%. So that's pretty much the low end of where you want. Just another note on the reserve, economic development money is not a formal reserve, so that one may have some different guidelines as far as that.
This is Trish again. I was just wondering if you could comment on the sales tax figures. I know we got the March figures and didn't notice much of a difference. So I think we actually showed a increase over what we had projected potentially. Do we have any ideas of when we might see, like in April, is that when we're expecting to see the first major impacts on sales tax? And I guess the second part of that is, are we hearing anything about what that might look like locally?
As far as I know, I mean, we've received our April payments. Everything is pretty status quo at this point. I don't know of any projections at this point. I would anticipate that this next month's payments will be lower, but that's just a guess. I think Lynn was going to give some information or at least talk about what the impact could be.
Mary Beth?
Yeah.
This is Jim. That's correct. And across the state, they're really looking at the next month's report as an indication. It's probably not going to be great, but no one really knows what the impact will be. But it probably will go down, and then we'll see. Second quarter is going to be the rockiest, and then we're going to see how it goes. So, yeah. So that's as much as we know now. Thanks.
Meeting's over, apparently.
Oh, hi. Hi, everyone. I've been talking to myself for a long time. I don't know. That's okay. I'm sorry, Britt. Mary Beth, I had a question for you.
Sure.
Can you hear me? Okay. So, in terms of our fund balance as it stands today, we have, when you subtract the 1.4, it should take us to 16.7. Is that really the fund balance that we're talking about at this point?
Yes, that's the fund balance that you have to work with at this point.
Okay, great. And then Lynn was going to chime in. She was muted too, so she's going to chime in now with some of the questions.
Yeah, so if we're looking at being at about 16.7 million after we took the payment out for that lawsuit that we settled. I did look before I came in here, and the range for the fund balance is 10 to 15% of our total revenues. That's our policy, and that does put us at about 13.5 to 20 million dollars. So with the 16.7, we're sitting frankly right in about the middle of it. The reserves, as Mary Beth has shown you on that sheet, we have quite a few of them, over $9 million of reserves, but those are pretty much restricted legally and are only available for the purposes they were set up for. At the bottom of your page, though, there where Mary Beth had noted the economic development fund balance of $895,000, that is definitely a little more flexible because it was not set aside into a legally restricted reserve. That was more just set aside for a purpose, and the legislature could change their purpose on that funding source. I did take a little time to look at the sales tax figures at what we brought in last year and did some estimates to give you some dollar amounts if we lose some percentages. Aileen was actually looking at just this afternoon at some information from NISAC that said maybe about a 12% decrease annually. So I looked, and last year we brought in $23.8 million in sales tax. So if you take that as our starting point and you take 10% away from that, we would lose basically $2 million. If we lose 15% of our sales tax, it's $3.3 million. That's probably our biggest concrete loss of revenue that we know of. We all know that the price of gas is way down and sales are certainly going to be down, and it will be a lagging effect. As Jim and Mary Beth both said, it'll start in the second quarter and go into the third quarter. I looked at our other state aid. Probably the most riskiest area would be in social services. Our other state aid that we receive, a lot of it is grant related. So if we don't get that revenue, we would also not spend the money. So we'll just have to keep an eye on that. I'm sure the state will give us plenty of notification if grants are going to be cut. So in the state aid area, again, if we lost 10% of our state aid for services, that could be another $1 million. Again, I have no idea if any of it will be cut. Again, it's a very essential service. But definitely when we had the recession in 08 and 09, we lost a significant amount of state aid and social services when that recession hit. The other big dollar item that definitely was on the agenda of the governor's budget before this all happened was Medicaid. It's a very risky area for us that we don't have control over. If they shifted even 10% of those costs to us, that again would be another $1 million hit to us. We have no information on that, but that's just something that if somehow the state's budget isn't going to come together, that would be a very easy place for the governor to go to try and make adjustments for this year's budget if he needs to. So I think this is relatively conservative. look, you could be looking at $2.5 to $4 million of lost revenue if the state feels they have to contract the state aid they've given us. But you're probably definitely looking at probably a $2 million loss, maybe in sales tax. The other good news, I guess, in a way, I was talking to Ray yesterday, just was asking him, I mean, placements of foster care are definitely down, and that will probably continue. We're having very low CPS calls since school is not in session. That's probably not the best outcome, but it's a reality that we're not getting the calls, so we're not going to be asking to remove children as quickly. Some of our preventive service contracts that are paid also as they're used will probably also not be utilized up to the full capacity that we do in past years, just because, again, we won't have as many people coming in to the pipeline. Some of those don't have the best reimbursement. They're mandated services, so that, again, can help our bottom line if we're not having all those expenditures. That's really all I have prepared, so if you have any questions, go ahead.
I have one from Madam Chairman.
Okay.
I know the governor was at the White House today with the president, and there was some kind of package that might be passed to help cities and counties. Is there any more on that issue?
I do not have any information on that.
Thank you.
I have a question, yes. I was curious, we get quite a bit of state aid, mental health money comes in through state aid. If that was to be affected, would that affect our county operations or our contracts with outside entities? Or, what would the impact of the loss of mental health state aid look like?
A substantial amount of the mental health state aid is passed through to not-for-profits in the community. So if that was lost, we wouldn't have the funds passed through anymore. We don't use a large percentage for their own operations.
Mr. Batman?
Thank you. First, I want to say how much I appreciate the work that Mary Beth and other people.
Keith, I'm sorry, we can't hear you very well.
I don't know, is that any better?
Not really. Can everyone else make sure they're muted?
Well, can you hear me now any better? So why don't I do this? Why don't I send an email later?
Well, I can hear you well now. We can hear you. Go for it.
Oh, it isn't. So it's all magic. But first thing I just want to say, I appreciate all the work that you and Mary Beth and other people have done to provide this information. It's very helpful. I understand how much work it is. Work you're doing. So thank you. One of the things that this is just a comment for all the legislators to keep in mind. So that if our revenue goes down, the only thing we can do is find other sources of revenue, which is virtually impossible, to cut expenses. And the later we go in the year, that loss of revenue gets amplified with expenses. So if we don't do anything until the last half of the year, and we have a $2 million shortfall in revenue, we actually have a $4 million shortfall. Because we have less time to make it up. That doesn't mean we do anything new, do anything difficult. We need to keep that in our mind. So later, if we have some kind of alignment, not sitting around until
Sorry, Keith. Keith, I guess you're going to send an email.
Okay.
Sorry. Oh. Keith, are you on?
That's better.
Yeah, Keith, we figured out the problem. If you'd like to start again. He left.
think he rolled his window up.
Okay, any other hands up for questions for Mary Beth or Lynn?
I do, Miss Chairwoman.
I'm trying to watch on the big screen tonight. It's very hard to see who's got their hand up, so.
Slowly.
Thanks, Paul.
Okay. So just a quick question for I guess Lynn. So Lynn, we're at approximately like $16 million. The low end of our county policy is like $13 million for what we need to have on hand. So we're talking roughly, we have $3 million worth of wiggle room. I mean, those are rough numbers, but that's what you're looking at. We're all seeing the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay. So if we dropped below the 13 million, I mean, what is the consequences of that? Or has this been tested before?
We've certainly been well below that amount back in the 90s when I started working here. I mean, there was no official consequence. It's a guideline given by the state controller's office to be healthy and, be able to prepare for future occurrences. So I don't think we would want to go below that, certainly. We can have issues for cash flow. That would be the problem that we had before. We had to borrow money to make short-term payments because we don't have a lot of control over our cash flow. Tax payments come in periodically, and the state can withhold their payments. And that definitely was something that happened. Is we had very high accounts receivables from New York State, and I would suppose that will happen again. That they will hold back there on a different calendar year from us. So a lot of times they'll hold their payments till as close to March as they can, instead of letting them flow throughout the year when they want cash. So that is something to be concerned about. We haven't had any problems with cash issues in a while, and that can just cause a lot of issues for the treasurer's office for sure.
Okay. So if the loss of revenue is I think you mentioned maybe $2 million, but maybe up to $4 million. If it hits that $4 million mark, I mean, we're talking about going below that, or I think what Keith was alluding to was you either cut expenses and services or you raise taxes. I mean, those are where we could be headed if this thing gets really bad. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think we need to start looking at ways to contain our expenditures. Anywhere that we can, and just keep an eye on things as they go, and not get too far ahead of ourselves in either a doomsday prediction or not watching the revenues either, and be realistic if they are reduced. There could be more of a chance that the state will react more next year. Also, when they put their budget together, if they have a huge budget shortfall, that could be where it ends up happening too, because they certainly have a lot of issues they're dealing with also, and I'm sure they're not looking at the individual grants that they've given out to counties or not-for-profits, but there might not be a refunding of a lot of grants that maybe people thought would be a 3 or 4 or 5 year grant. It could be that they won't be able to afford to renew it because there is always that they always put in their contract language that they're not always renewable if there's no funding.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Legislator Dennison?
Yeah, talking about the fund balance. Just remember one thing, that's the taxpayers' money, and they're the ones that are going to be hurting. And the reason why we're talking about this right now, because people aren't going to have the money that they've had. So I think raising taxes is something that's absolutely not. I mean, we shouldn't even be thinking of that in a time like this. I mean, the reason for a fund balance is for emergency purposes. Well, we've hit our emergency right here, I think. And just on another note too, maybe it's time that all the upstate counties start getting together and pushing back on Albany with all the mandates, because maybe now's the time to do it.
Tim Lattimore, you have your hand up?
Yes, Chris Palermo, is he in the room?
Yeah.
I am, Mr. Lattimore.
Mr. Palermo, I think there's some litigation going on in regards to the opioid.
Mr. Lattimore?
Yes?
About 2 weeks ago, I sent out an update, but it is privileged information. That might be an appropriate.
I mean, all that legalese that sometimes I don't understand it as a layman. Can you tell me how soon it'll be before we have a settlement and some cash in hand?
I don't have any information for you in public session, but certainly I'd be happy to have the conversation with you outside of the meeting.
Yes, I mean, it was nice that the tobacco money came in at a needed time. Hopefully, we'll get lucky with that one.
Hope so.
Thank you.
Legislator Dennison, your hand still up or no? Mr. Batman?
Well, partly I just wanted to see. I disconnected and reconnected. Is the audio better now?
Better for us in chambers. Yep.
Oh,
Sounds good.
Okay, great. That's largely what I wanted to check. But one thing I did want to point out that I sent the that Lynn didn't mention is Tim Lattimore mentioned earlier how the Jim Orman had improved our bond rating. Well, one of the things that bond ratings are based upon are the fund balance and those kinds of things. So that's another reason we have to be careful to go too far below our target on. In fact, we don't want to go below our target on fund balance. It will affect our bond rating in the long run. So it's just that there's lots of reasons that we need to maintain the course. So thanks. And maybe I'm glad you can hear me. I don't know. Maybe you're not glad, but thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Pinkney?
Yeah, I just want to follow up on what Andy was saying with taxes. At this point, I think it's great with the information that we're being shared. And I'm optimistic that we'll control and we'll watch our spending as best we can. And, and we should be all right. And I guess this reverts back to sometimes, when we're sitting there and we've got 18 or 19 million or 20 at the end of the year, and we're saying, what should we be doing with this? I guess in hindsight, it's always better to have a little extra cash in reserves. So I think, I'm optimistic that we'll make wise decisions and ride this thing out.
Thank you. So you have some information here to absorb from Mary Beth and from Lynn. I am not the budget director or the deputy treasurer, and the rest, some of the research that I've done and the people I speak to, of course, it's a little bit different everywhere, but in general, I think the 2 to 4 million of lost revenue is pretty, maybe wishful thinking, and I think it could be more of a deeper impact, of course. So, but again, it depends on who you talk to. And in light of that, this is such a moving target that I think, my plan is to have this meeting, this update once a month moving forward, so that we can all get a picture and a presentation about where we stand. And I think we're going to learn an awful lot in the next 4 weeks. What I need to have you guys start thinking about is we passed a resolution. We passed a resolution authorizing our employees to be paid without the use of their accruals. And that resolution is set to expire April 29th. So we need to think about a decision and as related to that resolution, because April 29th is next week, and I'd like you to, I know this is a lot to take in, so I don't expect anyone to have an answer tonight, and but we need to discuss, what is it we're going to do? Are we going to extend the resolution? New York State is on pause until at least May 15th. I don't know if that's something anyone here is considering. If not, we need to understand the reality of when this resolution is up, which authorized employees to be paid without using accruals for 45 days, and we were very flexible. We need to come up with a plan for how we're going to conduct business and how people are paid and what our expectation will be for the employees of the county. So I will resend that resolution out to everyone to look at and to think over. I will communicate with you folks over email in the next couple of days. And I'm expecting to have some discussion at the next ledge meeting next week. I think we need to arrive at a decision next week on this. So does anyone have any thoughts at the moment about that? Elaine?
Yep. I gotta get myself off. Trying to unmute.
Okay. Oh, you're still muting. She can't see me very well.
All right. Is that better? Can you hear me now?
We can.
Okay. My only question is, if we're still on pause till the 15th of May, that would also indicate that we have a directive to reduce our workforce in the building by 50%. If that's true, do we have room now, based on the number of people coming into work, to start to bring some of that workforce back in and still stay within that 50%?
So yes, we're still within the 50%, and I don't know if this is all in the up and up conversation. Part of this crisis is showing county governments how we can operate successfully. So personally, and this is a discussion I have with all of us, I don't know that the goal is to go ahead and fill up the building again. I think we've identified places where we can be flexible as employers and start making some better choices for our employees. So I don't see this as an end goal as to flip a switch and refill the building. I think that we need to sit back and think about and do an assessment of, what has really worked, what can possibly be changed to work in the future. I think we ought to, I know that, we heard the governor, he's got a lot of interesting catchphrases, but idea of reimagining county government is something that we really need to take into strong consideration. So I think department by department, we can identify these functions that can be maybe done remotely, and there may be some willing participants to do that. Some people working remotely is very successful, and others it's not. So, but this is all something to be thinking about in the next couple weeks. Mr. Whitman?
Yeah, I think you bring up a really good point. Not just the government, but I think this is really going to bring some ideas and some thought to how day-to-day business is done in our country and in our world. And, we've been pondering, do we keep the county office building we have? Do we build a new one? Do we renovate? What are we going to do? Maybe we don't need half the office space we have now. Maybe there's another way to do it that is efficient and effective, and the employees are happy with it. And, just a little more extreme on that, I think this is going to bring to light in a lot of businesses, and I don't think government should be any different. A lot of positions that maybe we didn't notice they were missing. I think this is a really good opportunity to take a look at exactly what we do need in a workforce and what's extra. And I think we should use this as a tool to learn from, if nothing else.
Thank you. Andy Dennison?
Yeah, Tucker basically said pretty much what I was going to say, so I'll just make it quick. I mean, we really, like it or not, need to take a hard look at whether we need as big of a Cayuga County government as we have, I guess, after this is all over.
Mr. Lattimore?
I think I've mentioned before that we could reduce the size of the ledge.
Okay, thank you. Any questions about the resolution? I will send it along so you folks can look at it, and then we can have discussions. At this point,
Two resolutions, if you want to get those out of the way before we go to
thank you.
executive session.
If there are no other questions, I have two resolutions to present. Where are they?
The first resolution, Public Works 1, is to fix a day and notice of the public hearing pursuant to general municipal law to make appropriations from the building repair reserve. And this is the resolution that, the alternative, I guess, to the one that was just tabled in Public Works. It's for Mr. Duckett to replace an air conditioning unit over at the 911 center. The resolution does have a blank for the amount, so if somebody for $30,924, that would be appreciated.
Whitman will move it.
Second by Ripley.
Ripley.
Oh, he's in it.
Mm-hmm. He's got a big long beard. First and
So-
second?
The motion included the amount for the units? Okay, thank you.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Carried, thank you.
Second resolution is,
Gives you as amended.
Oh, did we amend it?
As amended.
he moved it with the amount in it.
Okay.
The second resolution is to fix a day and notice of a public hearing on a local law repealing local law number 5 of 2018 and establishing the departments of building and grounds, weights and measures, and the Cayuga County Highway Department, establishing the positions of superintendent of building and grounds, director of weights and measures, and highway superintendent. This resolution, we had previously set a public hearing.
And then we'll move it.
Yeah, second, Batman. Second.
Okay, discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Oh,
Aye.
opposed? Carried, thank you. Okay, I'm going to entertain a motion to go into an executive session.
Batman, I move it.
Second, Pinckney.
Batman. Pinky. All in favor?
Aye.
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 We have directions on what. You can be reminded.
What do I do with the?
So for those members of the legislature who are going to enter into the executive session, I did previously send out an email with the room name where we're meeting, so you'll need to disconnect from this current meeting, enter the executive session meeting, after which we'll reconvene back in this room. Thank you. Keep broadcasting that live, and we probably should.
Oh,
We should go and
Oh,
talk.
physically go. I didn't know.
Oh, there you are. Everything is done. You just watch that. You can watch it on YouTube. Yeah, watch it on cautious. still have some legislators who are in the chambers room. You're going to want to go into the executive session room. If you have any questions about that, you can call my cell phone and I can help you connect to that if you need to.
Hey, Sheila. It's Amanda.
Yes, Amanda?
Do you know if they'll be doing any business after this?
They said no.
Okay. And that amount for that PW1, was it 30,924?
Hold on, because I did write it down. 30,924.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. Where's she coming from?
Sky.
I don't know I texted Chris. Because it's still not on YouTube.
Oh, because they have to go back and close out.
They need to switch off.
Oh, here it comes.
Ready? You want to come in?
Yeah.
You fucking
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Any other business to go before the board?
Motion to adjourn, Andy.
Second, Charlie.
Awesome. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, I'll be sending you out some emails and I look for your feedback. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Aileen. Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Thank you.